Welcome to the latest edition of the Gary Neville podcast from Stamford Bridge, where we've seen a familiar story, but it was a story that had its highs and lows from Tottenham's point of view. They thought they were going to go in at half-time a goal up, and that's what the main talking point for us was at half-time. And now that they've, obviously, the second half went away from them, how do you reflect on that moment? Was it a massive moment in the way the game panned out?
A huge moment in the game. Just turn my sound down. It's a huge moment in the game. I think if you're Antonio Conte, the approach to the game was all about making it difficult for Chelsea, frustrating them, and then trying to pinch one on the counter-attack, and they did. And I still stand by the fact that it was a valid goal. Never thought in real play it was a foul. Thiago Silva has thrown himself to the ground. It's the sort of slightest of touches on the back. That is not a push. I know when you slow it down, you sort of see the movement of Harry Kane's hand. It's because the ball's been played behind Thiago Silva that they're both trying to stop themselves because they're both running forward. He was never getting to that Thiago Silva. His change of direction capability wasn't there because of the ball being played back behind him, and he's just thrown himself to the ground, having felt the slightest of touches, and he's won the foul. And from his point of view, if I was a defender, I'd say clever, well done, all you could do. But I'm surprised that it was given as a foul. I'm surprised that VAR didn't overturn it. I know that I'm maybe in a minority because I know that in the studio, Roy Keane, I wish I'd met that Roy Keane 20 years ago, the mellow,
this is the gentle Roy
the
Keane.
reflective Roy Keane 20 years ago, but he said it was a foul. I mean, I can't believe that I would ever hear Roy Keane think that was a push or a foul, because I think if it was the other way, would you want a penalty against you for it? And so, anyway, look, I'm be interested to see what Antonio Conte says, what Thomas Tuchel says. Well, I know what Thomas Tuchel will say, but Antonio Conte, I think, will be furious. And look, it was the game plan. Get a goal in front, have something to hang on to, keep it at 0-0, frustrate. And it didn't work in the end because Chelsea came out really strong second half.
Yeah, Chelsea that are short of confidence, really, against everybody else, but not against Spurs, of course, because of the Carabao Cup semi-finals. But it took a wonderful goal to open the game up for them.
A wonderful goal, and like you say, not being confident against anybody else, but against Spurs. And the way Spurs set up today is a little bit old school from Antonio Conte. I can't really ever go to him for it because they've got such a poor record here. But it was really a very basic type of sort of system and performance. And once Chelsea got the goal in front, that was it. Game over. Game plan over as well. Ziyech, I think, had been dangerous down that right channel in the first half with Mount. They'd probed down there and could have got maybe Lukaku in a couple of times through little pullbacks and half chances. And in the second half, it came off. Ziyech, I gave him man of the match. I just thought he did really well. And he's up against real opposition within his own squad from the likes of Werner and Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, Mount. They're all sort of can play in that position. But he has got that sort of Mahrez feel about him, where there's sort of that little bit of a dip on his left foot. It's a lovely left foot as well. He puts good delivery into the box on set pieces, and it was a brilliant goal. Made a little bit by Azpilicueta's run, just that little decoy, which meant that Sessegnon, they're important little moments, those. Azpilicueta, we've seen him play left, right wing back, right centre back, right back, but he knows the game, he knows the position, and he just goes outside Ziyech, which means that Sessegnon has to go with that run a little bit, which allows Ziyech to come back inside. And then there's still a lot to do, but it's a brilliant finish.
I'll talk about, you've been a professional defender for your career. We've got Chelsea, and I almost feel I'm boring myself, let alone the viewers, about it, but the number of headers they score, the number of defenders who score, and the number of set pieces they score from, and they've done it to wrap up the game again. That doesn't happen by accident, does it?
No, I mean, I've always, just Chelsea as a club in terms of style of play, probably going back to Jose Mourinho, I always thought of them as being strong, powerful.
John Terry,
resilient, Carvalho, Drogba, Costa, just always felt that they're a team that stifle you and on set pieces are strong and just a robust team. And I think this team's robust. I say I'm disappointed with Chelsea. I think that they're underperforming to be so far away from City. I really do. And I named at the end of the game, there were 5 people or 4 players still left on the bench that would be any other first team probably in the country. And that's having made 3 substitutions, not in the top 14. I mean, absolutely unbelievable squad. Maybe just the Lukaku incident, the manager talking a little negatively, I think, up to Christmas.
And they have played more games
They
than
have.
anybody else.
They have, but they've got a massive squad,
Yeah,
Martin. I mean,
yeah.
the squad. I mean, I've just read them out at the end there, who was left on the bench, having played 11 players and made 3 substitutions. They've still got Pulisic, Werner, Chalobah, and Barkley and Havertz on the bench. That's 5. And that means they've played the team that started, and they've brought on Kante, Alonso and Saul. So, I mean, what a squad. That's like 2 world-class teams. So the idea that they can't play, I mean, it's only 2 or 3 more games. I mean, more than Spurs, but more than most, it's 1 or 2. I mean, City, I think they've played the same games as haven't they? Or 1 more, maybe.
One more, I think.
Yeah, so I just don't feel that's an excuse when you've got the squad of Manchester United. I should have been more vocal probably 3 or 4 weeks ago around the COVID cancellations when United started it and Leicester and Arsenal and Liverpool all then chipped in. But Chelsea asking for a game to be called off when they had a strong squad out that day, I felt was a message that you send to your players that, you know, we're not quite right. Then the fatigue and the sort of, we played too many games. And then the Lukaku interview came. So I think they've almost, I said during the commentary, they've talked themselves out of a title race, it feels like to me. And I don't know why, because everything looks so good. And I, like to think I can spot a team that have championship quality. Usually one that's won the Champions League and had a big boost in Europe the year before, or a big trophy. Liverpool then went on and won the Premier League the year after. The squad they've got, the depth, it is comparable. It is the most comparable squad to City, and they shouldn't be this many points off them. And so I would expect, Lukaku hasn't scored today, but I thought his general performance was good. First half, holding his position, making sure the 2 centre-backs were pinned for Mount and Kovacic to get in those channels. Second half, holding it up. If the goals start to come for Lukaku and they start to get that rhythm, the midfield's good, the defenders are good, you just mentioned it. They've got good defenders all across that back line. They need, if they can, to get James back. Reece James on that right-hand side, not because of Azpilicueta not doing a good job, but he does give them a real sort of delivery and presence and energy down that side. I still think they could get a lot closer to City as this season goes on. And it is dependent upon, I think, James coming back and Lukaku starting to hit the ball in the back of the net.
It is odd. We've seen 2 back 3 managers play with back 4s
Yeah.
today, going totally against the grain, really, particularly Conte.
Yes, I mean, like I say, I think you've got the stat better than I have, but it's going back 6 years?
Since 5 and a bit. Since September 2016, they went on and won the title, but they were 3-0 down with a back 4 at Arsenal, brought Alonso on, went to a back 3, won the championship. They kept it when he was at Chelsea, and then he went to Inter and won the league, and all the time the same.
Yeah, so he's not played a back 4 for 5.5 years, and today he's tried something different, almost like he's thought, I can't beat I can't beat Chelsea playing the way I play, which again sends
with the players that he's got.
Which sends again a message to his own players that he hasn't got full belief in them. I'm sure he'll have sold it a different way, that we're going to try something different, but it was a 4-4-2, just a straight 4-4-2 with 2 wing backs, full backs at left and right wing. He wants players, doesn't he? I mean, Antonio Conte, I think, I said before the game, I think it was to Jeff Shreves, Antonio Conte is the only manager that I've seen come to Chelsea and be the match of them. He won the championship in the first year, and I thought he stood up to them in the second year and left on his own terms. Almost like, you're not going to mess me around. He's a wise guy. I think he's going to get money out of Daniel Levy this week. I think he wants 2 or 3 players in that squad to reflect what he needs, but also I think so he can achieve what he thinks would be a really good job this season, which would be top 4. That would be an absolutely outstanding achievement for Antonio Conte and Spurs this season, and they can do it. He needs all his players fit, and he probably does need those 2 or 3 players in. But he's the type that is unconventional. He's likely not to have probably consulted the recruitment department. I mean, he'll want his own players in. When I say his own players, the ones that he's selected, that he knows. And that sometimes might make Daniel Levy feel a little bit awkward, and certainly people at Spurs that want to go through the traditional system. So I think they're going to have that arm wrestle this week. But I think that was maybe, again, he's probably got it within him today to say after the game to Daniel Levy and the Tottenham board, look, that's the best I can do out there, and you can see we're well off them. Because that's what today, to me, has proven, that Chelsea are well in front. Not just because of what we've seen, but what we've not seen off the bench. from Chelsea as well, which is so much more to come.
I don't know how much you saw of it. Of course, Liverpool played earlier and won at Crystal Palace. There was a big call for a penalty, but they were leading at that time and it was late in the game. Are they still within reach of the title? And Manchester City will probably feel that is the case.
A little bit.
Do you think that?
A little bit. A little bit. I mean, Liverpool are doing, I think, really well without, obviously, two of their main players. They are, I think, little things like that last night give a little of encouragement with, obviously, Southampton getting a point against City. City, they're a machine. You don't expect them to make a lot of mistakes, but they could. They could, and Liverpool and Chelsea have got to believe that. I'm not that disappointed in Liverpool, to be honest with you, because I think they have to be at full pelt all the time to get sort of with City, just because of the fact they haven't got the squad Liverpool at City have got. But I do think Chelsea have, and I expect it to get close. I don't expect this runaway league. 5 weeks ago, we expected a 3-horse race, and we've almost been pushed into a feeling that City have won it. I don't think we've got the 3-horse race back this weekend through the fact that Chelsea have won and Liverpool have won and City have drawn. But I don't think we're going to have that sort of runaway 20-point sort of championship that we've had sometimes with City. And
you've experienced being caught, haven't you, by Arsenal in your Manchester United days when everybody thought you'd won the league.
It can happen. It can happen. And Liverpool have got it in them if they can keep that 11 together. That strongest 11, get Mane and Salah back flying. And this squad here that Chelsea have got, like you say, if they can get Lukaku absolutely buzzing, bashing people around, backing into them like he did and rolling them like he did in that last half an hour, and you can start to put the ball in the back of the net. And they've got so many of those inventive ones around them. There's 5 or 6 of them, isn't there, that you could play in and around him. If they can just hit form between them and just, like I say, they can play 3 games a week, this squad, because they can change those 2 players every game and not really have a dip. You know, whether it was Pulisic and Werner today, or whether it was Ziyech and Mount, or whoever it may be, Havertz, you don't see a massive dip in terms of quality when one plays or the other. So if they can you can keep them all happy, Thomas Tuchel, I think they can have a really strong finish to the season. I really do. And I'm hopeful that I said I think the quality in the Premier League this season is outstanding. And it doesn't deserve to be a sort of what would be someone winning it by 15 points. It doesn't feel that way.
I want to talk to you about relegation before we finish, but let's just wrap it up because Manchester United people want to know what you think of it. What's been a good week for Manchester United. And 4th spot seems to be now the target for, as you say, a number of clubs, Tottenham being one of them. But United are in position at the moment.
Very good week. Tough games. I say tough games that you think Manchester United would win, but with the way in which they've been playing, you're not quite sure anymore. And I think that Brentford first half they rode their luck, but then got there in the second half. And yesterday, just that little bit of something happening sometimes, which just goes in your favour. I think Ralph Rangnick comes out of this week stronger than he started the week because of events that have occurred. I think everyone's seen what's happening. I think they're backing him, and obviously backing him anyway. But I just feel like he feels stronger and more in control than he was maybe a week or 2 ago. The goal in the last minute's a big one for the club, big one for the squad,
and for the scorer.
A big one for the scorer.
Yeah.
I think it was really important. There was a lot of questions being asked of Marcus Rashford. I'm not quite sure it's fair that it's suggested that he's distracted by off-field events as soon as he has a difficult patch. That's the easy thing to say because no one knows why he's a difficult patch. He could be having a difficult patch because of a number of different reasons. Could be injury, loss of form, confidence, the team not playing well. But it's the easy thing to do, isn't it, to point towards the sort of the off-field stuff. But it was a big thing for him. The thing for me about Marcus Rashford yesterday when I saw him celebrate that goal was that it brought joy to him, and I think that's the most important thing when you're a football player: passion and joy. I'm not saying you have to walk around with a smile on your face because I was miserable as sin when I was playing football, and to be fair, quite often cantankerous and argumentative.
I did see you smile once.
Once in 20 years
you after you won the league at Southampton. Yes. You were very happy then.
But Martin, the thing is, I either want to see joy or passion or fire. I don't want to see that face of nothing. And I think Marcus in the last couple of months or so, he's just looked drained in his face of any energy, of any sort of spirit. And that can't happen. So you can have fire, you can have anger, you can have joy, you can have all those different emotions, but we need emotion. We can't have lack of emotion. And I think Marcus, just yesterday, it was a big moment for him. And hopefully that now gives him the confidence to rise against, puff his chest out, and and do the things that he does, because he's an excellent striker, an excellent forward.
We haven't talked much about the bottom of the table in these podcasts, but Everton has to be discussed, and where we are with them. From your perspective, what's going on at Goodison Park?
I mean, how wrong I get it sometimes, my predictions. I had them as the ones to watch this season, or the overachievers, I think it was, on Monday Night Football, because I just thought Rafa Benitez was the wrong choice for Everton. I said that publicly. I didn't think it would work in the long term, but I thought that he would be a good Everton coach, a good Everton manager. He would get them tough to beat. They would play direct. They would be resilient, almost in a Moyes fashion and sort of a historical Everton fashion. And I thought it might go wrong one day. I didn't think it would go as badly wrong as it has. I mean, this is not something new, but the idea that they sold, didn't you, a couple of days before sacking the manager, again, just odd, really odd decisions. If you're going to sack a manager of a football club, you keep the players there until you've sacked him, at least to let the new manager come in and basically make his own decision.
And sell him to a club you're playing just a few days later as well.
And playing against, but also I think in the same sort of what would be Sphere as in terms of competitiveness and where you want to be. That's sort of what would between sort of 5th, 6th and 9th, 8th. You know, they're going to be in there, those teams. And I just thought it was a strange decision. That was an obscure decision which tells you that the club is... It's obvious the club's not functioning well behind the scenes, but that is just a real huge demonstration of it, that they're not connected together, the dots aren't joined up, and that would be a problem, I think, generally, because that just means that there isn't the sort of what would be the thread from the top that's needed to create a good football structure and a good football project. I don't know where they go from here now. Obviously yesterday they lose, a bad one for them. You've got Steven Gerrard on the bench. You've got Coutinho on the pitch. You've got Digne on the pitch. It just feels like a really bad, almost
and
like
some crowd behaviour.
And some crowd behaviour as well. So you've got salt in the wound as well. I mean, Martin, it's a great football club. Everton's a great football club. I mean, I used to love playing there. My brother played there and couldn't speak highly enough of it in terms of the spirit of the people, passionate. They gave him a tough time when he first went there, but he accepted that. He didn't want to be accepted easily straight away. He's a Mancunian. His name's Neville. We weren't liked by people from that time, that part of town. But he could win them over through hard work and commitment and sort of that sort of spirit of fighting and doing the very best for the team. And I think Everton fans have been sold short so often. And I'm almost desperate for them, more than Newcastle now, really. But the fact that Newcastle have got this new ownership, and the fact that
but Everton have got more money. They've put more money in this week.
I feel desperate for Everton that they should. The fans. It's not necessarily the club.
Do you think being in the same city as Liverpool makes it almost an impossible job?
Well, it's not been a problem for Manchester City. The noisy neighbours are, to be fair, incredibly
That's
noisy.
a very good answer. But
you look at
even that took a while for the diehard fans to accept.
I asked the question, Martin, I've asked the question regularly over the last 10 or 15, 20 years, that at the time that the Abu Dhabi ownership bought Manchester City, why would they not buy Everton at that point? Because they were probably a bigger club. Why would they not go and buy Newcastle? Because they were a bigger club. They bought Manchester City and have turned it into one of the best sporting projects in the world with what they've done, not just in this country but in other parts of the world, and it's a brilliant football operation. So why would you not be able to do that with Everton, with a new stadium, with a brilliant fan base? If Everton were winning and up there at sort of second, third in the league, you'd be 50, 60, 70,000 people going watching them every single week. So for me, there's no reason why it can't be. It just doesn't feel like they've got the same sort of organisation behind the scenes in the ownership as obviously City have. They haven't got that. And it almost feels like Everton are sort of meant to suffer. Everton fans are meant to suffer. It's that feeling when you go there.
I know just what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's almost, and a part of it they play to as well. I know a couple of Everton fans. I work with a couple of them.
Gallows humour and all that.
Yeah, I work with a couple of them, and City fans were like that though.
Yeah.
If you talk to the
typical City.
If you talk to the City fans over a sort of 20, 30 year period, and you think of when they won that league for the first time, they expected it to go wrong when Aguero scored. They knew that that's what happens to us. So you've got to change that mentality. And one day I hope it happens, because I do like the idea and always have. I don't like true FFP, where you can't put money into a football club, and that's nothing to do with Salford. I was saying this 15 years ago, when there were many at Manchester United even that wanted FFP. That meant that the most revenue, you can only spend that much on players, but that meant that you were never able to catch Manchester United or Liverpool or Arsenal, the top 3 earning clubs in the country in revenue. The reason we see Chelsea here today, who have won numerous Premier League titles, and City, who've won numerous Premier League titles, and Leicester, and you hope that Everton can rise and Newcastle can rise, and you see great clubs can come and win again. It's because we want that. We want the league to be competitive. We don't just want it to be the same 1-2 clubs every single season. And I know at the moment City are going through a strong patch. That's because they've got an exceptional manager. But Liverpool have come back. Liverpool didn't win the league for 30 years. And yet they're competitive again. So we need that sort of competition to exist. And I think Everton, hopefully one day, will see them have their day, have their moment. They don't win trophies. I mean, even Tottenham are similar. Tottenham have got everything in terms of a stadium, and the stadium's the best in the world. So you want to see Tottenham and Everton and others competing right up there in first and second, so that it disturbs and disrupts the sort of mix all the time of what we see. And maybe Derby County one day back in the Premier League and challenging for the Premier League trophy.
I was going to ask you, if Wayne Rooney rang you up and said, I've been offered the Everton job, what advice you'd give to him?
Well, I would say, he wouldn't ring me up to ask for advice for that, because I think he'd jump at the chance, obviously. I mean, Wayne Rooney being asked to be Everton manager, growing up as a fan, a kid there, going back, obviously, at the end of his career, I don't think it'd take 5 minutes for him to go back. Whether that'll be right for him now or not, whether it would work or not, I don't know. One thing I did think, though, listening to Steven Gerrard's interview, when did they play last night, wasn't it, Everton Villa? Was it last night?
Yeah, lunchtime.
Lunchtime, sorry. Yeah. I was listening to Steven Gerrard's interview after the game, before the game actually, and after the game, and I thought, he's speaking well. I played with Steven Gerrard, and I played with a lot of the sort of, or against, or managers and players that I see. I think he's absolutely outstanding in interviews, Steven Gerrard, and that goes beyond what he was as England captain when, I was serving under Roy Hodgson. He was England captain, he'd do interviews all the time, and he was good then, but not special. I think that then, obviously, as a player at Liverpool, he spoke well, but again, not someone that you would really stand out. But I think his interviews as a manager for Aston Villa, and I didn't see all of his interviews up at Rangers, but he really does speak well, and he's authoritative and knows exactly what he wants. And the system of play, when I watch them play, he knows what he wants. I think he's had a really good start to Premier League life. But going back to Wayne Rooney, he'd have to come into the Premier League and do what Steven Gerrard is doing now. He'd have the passion. He's obviously got a grounding at Derby, and he's working in difficult circumstances, so he's getting a good experience. But he'd jump at the chance, of course. Whether that's I don't know what they want, or who they want, or how they're going to play it at this moment in time, the Everton board, because you can't see a plan. You can't really see a plan.
Can you see that? I was going to ask you right at the end of it. Newcastle have obviously had a very important win. And Norwich have won the last couple.
Yeah.
And Dean Smith's obviously betting him in there, and Eddie Howe doing the same job at Newcastle. They're giving themselves a chance, and if they have a chance, teams like Everton above them are in trouble. Yeah.
They could be in trouble. We said before the game on Friday, it's that sort of 4-team mini-league. And as we said it, I think myself and Jamie Carragher, we said we're maybe being a bit presumptuous here, because all of a sudden over a weekend this could change, and all of Everton lose and the Leeds lose, and all of a sudden you start to think, hang on a second, they're only 1 or 2 games away from being sort of stuck right in the mire, and there's a lot of games to go. And I think Everton could get dragged into it. I think they've got enough to get out of it. But it was interesting Friday night. We must mention Claudio Ranieri. He did an interview with us before the game. I mean, it was inconceivable when I went out and met the Watford fans an hour and a half, 2 hours before kickoff, that they thought they could lose that game, let alone lose 3-0. So it was a bad one. It was a really bad one for Watford. But Norwich, who I think everybody has seen as the underdogs, the whipping boys, they're definitely going down. I still think a little bit like that, but not as sure as I was, because Dean Smith, I think, has got something happening there. The players are really happy. The boy Josh Sargent came over, scored his first 2 Premier League goals of the season at the end of the game, and you could sense there was a happiness in there and a spirit. And they keep that, Norwich, and they've got a real chance, because you don't know what's happening elsewhere. Burnley have gone to Arsenal today and got a point. So those ones above, Brentford, Leeds, Newcastle, obviously, Everton, they could all, there's some big clubs there that we could lose out of this Premier League if they're not careful and they don't buck up.
Well, we've got 2 weeks.
We have got a winter break. How do you feel about that?
We've got 3 weeks with the FA Cup.
We have got 3 weeks. How do you feel about that? Weird, strange, eh?
I think it's strange this season because of the games that have been called off and the whole
World Cup.
the World Cup but the wish to get back on track post-COVID, if we can dare say post-COVID. I probably shouldn't say that, but certainly with it being maybe more manageable now, that we need to get that done, and then obviously with the World Cup, it's kind of strange, but we're living in strange times, really.
Do you know what I feel about the winter break? I'm okay with it, and I think, to be fair, it's been called upon for so long, and I do believe we can't have it at Christmas like conventional Europe does, because I do think we have to keep that Christmas programme. So I do think it is the right time to have it if we're going to have a winter break, and as I say, I'm quite supportive of it. I think generally, I hope we don't lose momentum in the season too much. I don't think we will, because I think there's too much to play for. But I feel as though ultimately it's the right time to have it for English football, and we shouldn't concede our Christmas programme, which I think, that's not being traditional. It is, I suppose, in some ways, but it's so important to the fabric of our country that I think either the first 2 weeks in January, or sort of where we are now, the last week or so, or 2 weeks in January and February, or last week in January and the first week in February, feels more comfortable and palatable to me than it does obviously over Christmas.
It feels odd in a winter where it was 10 degrees last Sunday. We were off because we weren't doing the game between Spurs and Arsenal, and I went to the coast. It was 10 degrees.
Yeah. Well,
so it's not. It's a break. The
break.
winterness suggests it's because of the weather. That's why the other countries have the break, because they can't play because of the weather.
It's not that.
So we could pick a break at a suitable time. I'm with you. I've grown up with football on Christmas Day, let alone Boxing Day. But if you like, the global nature of the game works against that, because you've got coaches saying, whatever the time of year, we don't want to play 3 times a week.
No, I mean, they have to play 3 times a week if you're in European competition, because that goes back.
They forget that, though, when they're 3 Premier League games.
No, I mean, 3 Premier League games a week is rare, but because of obviously COVID cancellation. But I have to say, I did welcome this week the announcement, whatever it was, where the Premier League said that they're going to change what's happening in respect of COVID cancellations. I have to say, I should have spoken a lot earlier on that. It was bugging me going back right to the very beginning, because of just my Salford experiences, when in the first lockdown, going back whenever it was a year or so ago, and we had 5 COVID cases, and I think we only had 12 players to call upon. And I took we made a decision that we should play. We have to play. You have to put your kids on the bench and you play. That's what you're here to do. You're here to play football. And the idea that you could call games off, I get the fact if you had multiple COVID cases, 8,
but
9.
has it opened the door to, if you have 10 injuries, you don't play?
Martin,
has it opened the door
cannot,
to that?
You cannot call football matches off with 1 COVID case and then AFCON and injuries. You can't. I'm sorry that you cannot call football matches. Yeah, but they have. I don't know how we've been. I don't know how we've ended up in this position. It's not through. I don't think it's designed that way. I think it's just almost occurred. And COVID has become, in the end, almost like a sort of second, 1 COVID case. And I repeatedly said, contrary to what sort of people thought, that this was nothing to do with Arsenal. I should have spoken 2-3 weeks before, when United called the games off, with all the players they have access to. And same with Liverpool when they called that Carabao Cup game off. Same with Chelsea when they were actually refused to have it called off. How can Chelsea, with all the players they have, call a football match off? They can't. So for me, I'm glad that this week there seems to be a little bit of a sort of an adapting of the rule, or a sort of an acceptance that we were getting into a dangerous position whereby it was being used, I think, and abused. So I did welcome that this week, because it was absolutely winding me up like you wouldn't believe.
We'll carry this on the other side of the winter break. Gary,
We will.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.